Let's talk about the Mario movie now that time has clearly cooled our heads, and maybe we can look through this movie with a bit more of an objective lens. As since my initial review of the movie, we've had some high highs and low lows around the conversation with this movie. Now, the Mario movie is a project that I think is quite a notable milestone for the animation industry of this decade. The ideas and murmurs of a Mario movie have been going on for absolutely years and years before it eventually came out, with some crowd always speculating that Nintendo were going to make something eventually, surely. We all want it, clearly. The fact that it ended up then being rolled out alongside Illumination Studios was quite the controversial decision to go forward with, but I think it's fair to say, pretty much across the board, this movie came out far better than initially expected. With the Illumination tagline and Nintendo having not necessarily the best track record in the past, this movie showed up with a whole chunk of disadvantages weighing it down. However, with it being the most iconic video game IP of all time and all sorts of directions that can be expanded because of the breadth of universe building that had already been established, there was a lot of potential for this movie, and I think that's pretty well reflected in the movie. Unexpected appearances appeared in the form of Form and Spike of all things and the extended Mario family, whilst at the same time the main plotline was pretty safe. And I think this is one of the biggest complaints that the movie really had. With so many Mario stories exposed to us in the past with all sorts of different games and RPGs, the idea that the story was literally just Mario beats Bowser, there you go, was something that came off as a little disappointing to a lot of fans, but I think that still works pretty great all the same. I personally had this gripe for the initial Sonic movie, so I think by the time that I got around to the Mario movie in 2023, a good 3 years later, I was a little bit more on board with the generic plotline. Still, with a plotline as safe as it is, it manages to cover all of its bases in a way that's perfectly referential, a giant love letter to the Mario IP, as well as dodging some notable red flags in its story. While of course they didn't need to do too much too adventurously, the elements that I think they really needed to checkbox was really establishing a nice brotherly relationship between Mario and Luigi, which I think is fair to say that they did well. They needed to get some good fan service references to all sorts of other characters, which they do up front with the forms of Toad and Donkey Kong, and then on the smaller side, like Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong making appearances. However, with a gigantic roster as the Mario universe over the past 40-odd years, there were of course some casualties along the way. We got to see Illuma, we didn't see Rosalina. Apparently Daisy was visible in some concept arts, as well as Toadsworth, but they didn't make an appearance in the final movie. The kind of thing that made hardcore fans wish there was more, but I can understand why the movie ended up going for a more streamlined approach to really get from point A to point B without crashing and burning from the complications.